Memphis, Tennessee has been a center of the American narrative. You could say even a center of the American collective unconscious, having been named after the former capital of one of, some might say, the greatest civilization in human history. That of ancient Egypt, that referred to itself as Kemet. In homage to this fact, we see the replica pyramid in Memphis, Tennessee, the so-called Great American Pyramid, on the banks of the Mississippi River, an obvious metaphor for the River Nile and all its mystique. This is undeniable and overt acknowledgement of the power of esoteric mystery traditions in determining, maybe even scripting, events in the world. A key code to the world's control matrix is the alphanumerical code of GEMATRIA, which is extremely easy to comprehend and will be explained for those who are not familiar with it later in this decode. The Great Pyramid of Giza in Egypt was built at a 7:11 or 11:7 ratio. 7:11 and 11:7 are considered the numbers of the goddess Isis, coded into the Great Pyramid of Giza. In English gematria, the Great American Pyramid has a value of 117, the number of Isis. So, modern-day America intentionally coded with the mysteries of ancient Kemet. The focus on Memphis, Tennessee and the Tyree Nichols event and its aftermath and the ripple effect happens at the start of Black History Month in the United States. The state of Tennessee is also the birthplace of the infamous Ku Klux Klan, the well-known white supremacist terrorist organization of which one of the greatest Freemason figures, Albert Pike, was a high-ranking member. Albert Pike was also instrumental in bringing Scottish Rite Freemasonry to prominence in the United States. Scottish Rite Freemasonry was the vehicle in which the Jesuit Illuminati infiltrated American Freemasonry. So, Tennessee, at the center and heart of the American narrative, and thus the location of this current ritual at this particular time. Memphis, Tennessee is recognized as the home of a king, the king of rock and roll, Elvis Presley, whose daughter Lisa Marie was born in Memphis and died just 2 days after Tyree Nichols died in Memphis. The city of Memphis, Tennessee resonates at an even greater level as a capital of the American soul, as the location of the killing of another American king, Martin Luther King Jr. In Kemet, Egypt, the king was titled Pharaoh, such as Ramses II, whose statue sits aside the Great American Pyramid in Memphis. So, the king, undeniably a central theme of the city of Memphis, Tennessee. Ramses II, known as Ramses the Great, Martin Luther King, Elvis Presley, the king of rock and roll. Another king is famous for allegedly commissioning the building of the Temple of Solomon. That is King Hiram of Tyre. Tyre, that is Tyre, pronounced by Americans Tyree, as in Tyree Nichols, who was beaten in Memphis by the Memphis Police Department and died 3 days later. Tyre, King Hiram of Tyre, who built the Temple of Solomon. He envisioned and financed the building of the temple. Solomon himself was a king described in the Bible's book of 1 Kings. So another occulted ritual link between the city of Memphis, Tennessee, and the king. This time it is King Hiram of Tyre. T-Y-R-E, the spelling of Tyree Nichols, originally from the city of Sacramento, California, a city whose only Major League Sports franchise is the National Basketball Association's Kings. As the world sits on the cusp of coronating an historic new king, Memphis, Tennessee, and the Tyree Nichols story is the latest chapter in epic ancient high ritual based off of the central archetype of the king. This is Rambo. These are the truth codes. I've started a series of decodes on the power of acoustic frequency. One theory is that the stones used to build the pyramids, temples, and great statues of ancient Egypt were cut and lifted into place using the power of harmonic resonance. The Great Pyramid has a unique acoustical resonance as demonstrated by modern American celebrity, acting and singing superstar Beyonce, who visited the Great Pyramid in 2009 on 117 or 711, November 7th or 7th November, the number of Isis. Isis and her son Horus's image, the inspiration for the image of the Virgin Mary and her son Jesus. Hence, Beyonce entered the Great Pyramid on 711-117, November 7th, dressed as the Virgin Mary, who is Isis. Again, the pyramid built at a 7:11 ratio. Beyonce has produced and recorded a song titled 711, whose music video included a human pyramid. Memphis, Tennessee is associated directly with the power of acoustical resonance. It is the home of the blues and has influenced rock and roll and multiple other forms of music and has spawned a music genre of unprecedented global popularity and incalculable profits. Although most of those profits were not and are not seen by the actual inventors of the blues music, but nonetheless, one of the greatest contributions to worldwide human culture in history is blues music, which started in the state of Tennessee. So, Memphis, Tennessee, like the Great Pyramid of Kemet, is associated with the power of harmonic frequency. Memphis's association with the power of harmonic frequency through its invention of the blues, which spawned rock and roll, is most popularly symbolized by a man dubbed a king. Elvis Presley, whose daughter, born in Memphis, died just 2 days after Tyree Nichols died at the hands of the Memphis Police Department. Lisa Marie Presley died in Los Angeles, whose NHL hockey team is the Kings. Tyree Nichols is originally from Sacramento, home of the National Basketball Association's Sacramento Kings. The city of Memphis, Tennessee resonate at an even greater level as the location of the killing of another American king, Martin Luther King Jr. So, Memphis, Tennessee, very much associated with the king. In Kemet, Egypt, the king was titled Pharaoh, such as Ramses II, whose statue sits beside the Great American Pyramid in Memphis. The king, a central theme to the city of Memphis, Tennessee. Another king is famous for allegedly commissioning the building of the Temple of Solomon. That is King Hiram of Tyre. Tyre, that is Tyre, pronounced by Americans Tyree, as in Tyree Nichols, who was beaten and killed in Memphis by the Memphis Police Department on January 7th. He died 3 days later, January 10th, 2023. Tyre, King Hiram of Tyre, who built the Temple of Solomon. Solomon, who was himself a king. So, another occulted ritual link between the city of Memphis, Tennessee, and the king. All this happens at a time when the world sees a new king. With no disrespect to any other royal family, the fact is that there is only one royal family in the world that is referred to as the royal family without their kingdom being specified. The world's new king, still yet to be inaugurated, is Britain's King Charles, whose zodiac sign is the Scorpion. Scorpio. There's a new Scorpion king. 5 Nichols Nickel. He died 5 days before the birthday of the king, Martin Luther King Jr., who died in Memphis. Memphis, the ancient Egyptian capital of kings. From the January 10th, 2023 death date of Tyree Nichols to the May 6th, 2023 inauguration of King Charles is a span of 117 days. Remember, 117 is the ratio to which the Great Pyramid of Giza was built. Tyree Nichols died in Memphis, Tennessee, which is named after the capital of ancient Egypt and has its replica of the Great Pyramid. 117, the ratio of the Great Pyramid. Great American Pyramid sums to 117 in Gematria. Tyree Nichols, the king symbol as King of Tyre, has date synchronicity with the world's new king, who will be coronated on 6th May 2023, a date written 6/5 or 5/6, May 6. Tyree Nichols was born on the other 6/5/56 date. Great Pyramid equals 65. Scorpion Unit equals 65. Graceland equals 65. Memphis Blues equals 65. In 2016, the Phoenix Suns of the National Basketball Association unveiled an interactive fan activity called Lion King Cam, where the arena's jumbotron would focus on parents with infants in the crowd who would then be prompted to raise their child in the manner that Rafiki raised Simba in the movie The Lion King, one of the most iconic scenes in the history of animated film. A scene so iconic that it was mirrored by this photograph of Tyree Nichols and displayed at his funeral service to imprint on the collective consciousness and mostly unconsciousness. English Gematria, the Lion King has a value of 56, 56, like Tyree Nichols' 5th June birthday, like King Charles' May 6th coronation date. Hiram Abiff, who built Solomon's Temple, was from the city of Tyre, after which Tyree Nichols is named. In York Rite Freemason 3rd degree Master Mason initiation rites, Hiram Abiff is resurrected from the dead, quote, by the grip of the lion's paw. The lion, directly related to Hiram Abiff of Tyre in Freemason ritual and allegory. The lion is the symbol of the zodiac sign of Leo. Leo is ruled by the sun. Hence, the Lion King Cam at the Phoenix Suns home stadium. And what does a phoenix do? It resurrects. The same way the sun resurrects at the vernal equinox. The same way that Hiram Abiff resurrects. There have been widespread comparisons of the Tyree Nichols beating to the highest profile recorded police brutality case before George Floyd, Rodney King, at the hands of the Los Angeles Police Department. Here is a headline from Newsweek magazine making the comparison of Tyree, King of Tyre, Nichols, to Rodney King. King, the absolute central theme and the heart of the Tyree Nichols narrative. King Charles to be coronated 6/5, 6 May. Tyree Nichols born 6/5, June 5th. Rodney King born in the year 65. Great Pyramid equals 65. Scorpion Unit equals 65. Graceland equals 65. Memphis Blues equals 65. June 5th is 5th June. 5/6 like 56. From the arrest and beating of Tyree Nichols in Memphis, January 7th, 2023, to the next anniversary of the arrest and beating of Rodney King, March 3rd, 2023, is a span of 56 days, like 5/6, 5th June, May 6th. Rodney King, born in Sacramento, California, the symbolic king of Tyre, Tyree, also born in Sacramento, California. And again, the only Major League Sports franchise in the city of Sacramento is the Kings. The signature architectural feature of Solomon's Temple is the twin pillars. The twins is a symbol of the zodiac sign of Gemini. Tyree Nichols was born in Gemini. Rodney King died in Gemini. The city of Memphis, Tennessee was founded on the first day of Gemini. 3 kings died in Memphis, Tennessee. Martin Luther King Jr., the king of rock and roll, Elvis Presley, and King Hiram of Tyre, Tyre, Tyree Nichols, symbolically. There are another 3 kings associated with Memphis, Tennessee. The 3 kings of the blues guitar. Albert King, Freddie King, and B.B. King. Neither of them are related, despite all having the same last name. What are the odds? Like B.B. King, and Tyree Nichols for that matter, Albert King was not a native of Memphis, but later made Memphis his home. In fact, like Tyree Nichols, the king of rock and roll, Elvis Presley, and Martin Luther King Jr., Albert King died in Memphis, Tennessee. So that's actually a 4th king to have died in Memphis. Albert King, one of the 3 kings of the blues guitar. Martin Luther King Jr. died in Memphis on April 4th, a date written 4-4, like 44. Tyree Nichols died in Memphis at the hands of the Scorpion Unit of the Memphis Police Department. In English Gematria, Scorpion has a value of 44. Tyree, who is Tyree as in King Hiram of Tyre, died on January 10th, 2023, exactly 44 weeks before the Scorpio King Charles's next birthday, which is November 14th, 2023. The symbolic Solomon's Temple of the original World Trade Center. Remember that Building 7, the middle pillar that fell, was occupied by the Salomon brothers. This symbol of the house to King Solomon, built by King Hiram of Tyre, was inaugurated on April 4th. Again, Tyree Nichols killed by the Scorpion unit. King Charles of Scorpio. His death and King Charles's next birthday separated by 44 weeks. 44, the date of death of Martin Luther King Jr. in Memphis. So the kings synchronized in dates and numbers. Three kings is a term for the stars of Orion's belt, the most recognizable star formation in the night sky. In ancient Greek legend, Orion is stung by a scorpion. So the king of Tyre, Tyree, one of the three kings to die in Memphis, stung by a scorpion unit, just as Orion of Greek mythology, of the three kings, was stung in legend by a scorpion. The constellation of Orion is associated with the god Osiris of ancient Egypt. Freemasonry's version of Osiris is Hiram Abiff, who was hired by King Hiram of Tyre to design and oversee the construction of Solomon's temple. There are three pillars in Freemasonry. One represents King Solomon. It is the pillar of wisdom. The middle pillar represents King Hiram of Tyre. It is the pillar of strength. The third pillar represents Hiram Abiff. It is the pillar of beauty. These are the three pillars of Freemasonry. The original World Trade Center in New York City was a symbolic Temple of Solomon. The middle pillar was Building 7. That was the third building to collapse. We know that the World Trade Center represented Solomon's temple because Building 7, the middle pillar, was occupied primarily by the Salomon Brothers Corporation, earning it the unofficial name of the Salomon Brothers building. Salomon means Solomon in Latin. In Freemason iconography, the twin pillars of Solomon's temple, right side up and vertical, are facing east. When they are turned horizontally clockwise, they then face north. The pillar that was to the left, Boaz, becomes the north pillar, which is the Tropic of Cancer. The pillar which was on the right, Jachin, becomes the Tropic of Capricorn in the south. The middle pillar becomes the equator. The Tropics of Cancer and Capricorn are 23.5 degrees north and 23.5 degrees south of the equator and are separated by 47 degrees. This is why Building 7 was 47 stories high. Homage to the tropics that they represented, which were part of Solomon's temple in Freemason iconography. The North Tower, the Tropic of Cancer, was topped out in Capricorn on December 23rd. The South Tower, Building 2, which represents the Tropic of Capricorn, was topped out in Cancer on July 19th. So the North Tower was Building 1, the South Tower was Building 2, and the middle pillar was Building 7. That's Buildings 1, 2, and 7. The three buildings that were collapsed on September 11th, 2001. This is 127, which is a number symbolic of Solomon's temple as per the Holy Bible. The Song of Solomon, which celebrates a house built by the Lord, which is what Solomon's temple is supposed to be, is venerated in the book of Psalms, chapter 127. The building of the Temple of Solomon was commissioned by King Hiram of Tyre, Tyre, as in Tyree Nichols. Police footage of his arrest and beating were released on 127. January 27th, in homage to the builder of the Temple of Solomon, King Hiram of Tyre, and Psalms 127. Solomon's temple is said to have stood in Jerusalem, in the city of Jerusalem, Israel, on the very day that the Memphis Police Department released footage of the arrest and beating of Tyree Nichols, 127, January 27th, 2023, it was reported that, this is in the city of Jerusalem in Israel, almost a dozen, 12, injured, and 7 killed in a terrorist attack on a synagogue. A dozen, 7, 12:7, 127, the number of the Temple of Solomon, from Psalms 127. Solomon's temple built by King Hiram of Tyre, pronounced Tyre by Americans. Buildings 1, 2, and 7 collapsed on September 11th. September 11th could be 11th September 119 or 911. In the Jewish tradition, Tisha B'Av commemorates the destruction of the Temple of Solomon. Tisha B'Av is, Tisha means ninth, Av is the 11th month in the Hebrew calendar. So 11/9, 9/11 commemorates the destruction of the Temple of Solomon, celebrated on Psalms 127, buildings 127. On 11/9, building 7 being the Solomon brothers collapsed. The symbolism is undeniable. Not to say that no one was killed in Tennessee. Sometimes real human life is actually lost in high ritual, as in 9/11, the most epic of all rituals ever performed. Actual lives were lost on a mass scale in an act of sorcery. And sometimes it is merely enacted, but the vibration put out by the ritual is what is of utmost importance. And the allegory, some say it is more than an allegory of Solomon's temple, that is actual history, which is hugely debatable, Solomon's temple. But Solomon's temple has been and will be central to whatever forces governed life on earth. 127, the code of Solomon's temple. It was 127, 1 month, 27 days from the birthday of King Charles V, the Scorpion King, November 14th, to the January 10th killing of Tyre Nichols. Again, Tyre was killed by 5 members of the Scorpion unit. Nichols, 5. Tyre Nichols was originally from Sacramento, California, which sums to 127 in the reverse Pythagorean or reverse reduction cipher of English gematria. Gematria is a mystical alphanumerical code that gives number values to words. In the simplest cipher of English gematria, each letter of the alphabet has a numerical value that is determined by its order in the alphabet. So, A has a value of 1 through to Z, or Z, having a value of 26. The values of the letters that make up a name, word, phrase, or sentence are added, giving that name, word, phrase, or sentence a specific numerical value. Words are converted to numbers through gematria. Reduced or Pythagorean gematria is single digits only. J is the 10th letter through to Z or Z, the 26th letter. Double digits are reduced to single digits by adding the individual digits of the double digit number and producing a single digit sum. The digits of 10 are 1 plus 0, which equals 1. So J has a value of 1 through to Z, the 26th letter, reduced by adding 2 plus 6, producing 8. Z has a value of 8 in the Pythagorean or reduced ciphers of English gematria. Reverse Pythagorean starts with Z, normally the last letter, but it's reversed, so Z is the first letter with a value of 1 through to A as the last letter with a value of 8, which is 26 reduced, 2 plus 6. In the reverse Pythagorean, aka reverse reduction cipher of English gematria, Sacramento, California, has a value of 127. The number of the Temple of Solomon from Psalms 127. The hometown of Tyre Nichols. 58 is a major gematria code in the symbolism and coding of Solomon's temple. In English reduction or Pythagorean gematria, which remember is single digits only, the letters that make up the phrase Solomon's temple sum to 58. So 58, very much a code number for Solomon's temple. The name Tyre Nichols sums to 58 in the same cipher of English gematria that Solomon's temple does. Solomon's temple is in Jerusalem. There was an incident in Jerusalem initially reporting nearly a dozen injured and 7 killed on the date 127, the same day of the release of the footage by the Memphis Police Department of the beating and arrest of Tyre Nichols. Jerusalem has a value of 58, like Solomon's temple sums to 58 in gematria, like Tyre Nichols has a value of 58. The civil rights attorney who manifests at every high-profile police brutality in the United States or hate crime against a black person, Benjamin Crump, has a value of 58. The architect of Solomon's temple, Hiram Abiff and Osiris, die at the autumnal equinox in Libra. Present at Tyree Nichols' funeral was U.S. Vice President Kamala Harris. It is perfectly normal to expect the Vice President of the United States to show up at funerals for random everyday American citizens. Well, of course not. This is ritual. Osiris is the consort of Isis. When Osiris is killed at the autumnal equinox in Libra, Isis is rendered a widow. There has to be an Isis figure in a Solomon's Temple ritual. Remember that the location of the memorial for Tyree Nichols was a church called Mason Temple. The name of the church alone embodies the entire esoteric basis for the event. Mason Temple Church. Kamala Harris is a Libra, born October 20th. Kamala Harris was there to represent the goddess Isis. 58 is the Solomon's Temple GEMATRIA code. Kamala Harris is 58 years old. 58 years old at the time of her attendance at Mason Temple for Tyre, King Hiram of Tyre, who envisioned and financed the building of Solomon's Temple. Kamala Harris, Isis. The mayor of Memphis, Tennessee is a Libra, Jim Strickland, born October 22nd, which is on the cusp of Libra and Scorpio. Remember, it's the Scorpion unit that killed Tyree Nichols. How appropriate when you see the details of the ritual elements here, the significance of Libra to Solomon's Temple, the autumnal equinox, and Scorpio, the Scorpion unit that killed Tyree Nichols. George Floyd was a Libra, born October 14th. The local Memphis National Basketball Association team, the Memphis Grizzlies, on 127 January 27th, happened to be playing in Minneapolis, Minnesota, the site of George Floyd's death, and famously held a moment's silence at that game. In the Holy Bible's Old Testament book of 1 Kings, chapter 7. 1 Kings 7. 1, 7. Like the day that Tyree Nichols was arrested and beaten, January 7th. And King Solomon sent and fetched Hiram out of Tyre. He was a widow's son of the tribe of Naphtali, and his father was a man of Tyre, a worker in brass, and he was filled with wisdom and understanding, and cunning to work all works in brass. And he came to King Solomon, and wrought all his work, for he cast 2 pillars of brass. The 2 brass pillars, the defining architectural feature of Solomon's Temple. Pillars, symbolized by the 2 towers of the World Trade Center in New York City. Twins is the symbol of the zodiac sign of Gemini. Tyree Nichols, Tyre, born June 5th, was a Gemini. The Jewish commemoration of Tisha B'Av is lamentation of the destruction of Solomon's Temple on the 9th day of the 11th month of Av. In the Latin cipher of English Gematria, Tisha B'Av equals 9/11. The police are associated with the number 9/11. In Gematria, Memphis Police Department equals 119. Thank you for watching. If you have subscribed, thank you for subscribing. If you have liked and shared, thank you for that as well. If you have not subscribed, please do so. And by all means, everybody, take care.